Hey, Lifespans class, this is Dr. Ang. I'm coming to deliver adolescence, and we're doing chapters 11 and 12, so you'll want to look for the two-part video on this content. But specifically for chapters 12, we are looking at social and personality development. We know both these aspects are critical. We've kind of looked at the growth and development, and now we're going to look more on the inside and kind of see the intertwinings of the adolescent as they develop socially and personality wise. So in adolescence, as most of us are aware, either from ourselves or if we have siblings, in my case kids that are in this stage, you know that the big question that they're asking themselves is, who am I? And as they seek to do some personal inner reflection to try to figure out who they are, as they go through this stage, they're also going to be looking through the lenses not only of their self, but also through how does the world see me? And that's where it's critical that we kind of come around the adolescent and make sure that they feel supported and that they have that time to reflect and get that social identity of that they're comfortable with who they are. They're not trying to be a parent or an older sibling or someone at school that they look up to, but that they're okay being who they are and being their personal best and knowing that that is enough. So the self-concept that they have, their perception is going to be their reality. So this is in the case where if you have an anorexic patient, as a nurse, I cannot go up and say, of course you're not fat. I mean, what are you thinking? You're not fat. Because I know that in his or her mind, looking in that mirror, if they perceive themselves to be overweight, that perception is their reality. So we need to kind of peel back that onion and look at the underlying causes of that. But me just logically telling them that that is not the case is not going to affect their perception, because their self-concept is that intense during adolescence, and this carries on well obviously beyond adolescence. Trying to get to a point where I know who I am and I like who I am regardless of the differences that I may have. So whether I wish I was shorter, taller, better at a skill, I could run faster, I could play something better, I may have a physical imperfection or challenge that I have, either intellectually, physically, whatever the case may be, but I can accept that's part of who I am, and I can make adaptations to that and still be successful and live a very fulfilling life. Some adolescents at this stage can get into pointing back to, I had a traumatic event, I was raised in a setting that was not supportive, different things that although they are reality to them, they can either become a crutch or they can become a stilt. It's going to help you catapult you to something bigger and better, or it's going to be something that holds you back. So this is also a stage that the way the adolescent processes things are going to lead to how they're going to be as a functioning young adult in society. Are they going to sit back and always be identified by that traumatic event or that limitation, or are they using that as a positive motivator to help them be successful in the coming stages? So Erikson's stage, I'm sure you've looked at this in a textbook, hopefully. Also look at, on Harvey, you can look at the different resources that we have listed there. And we know that identity versus role, confusion or diffusion, again, this is recapping off of chapters 11 that we just covered. However, identity versus role, confusion. It's interchanged with diffusion, but I'm going to reference it as confusion. So again, I know who I am. Sure, there are things I would like to change. However, I'm going to use those not as a crutch, but as a stilt to catapult me to greater things as I transition through the different stages in life. If you have role confusion, we see this oftentimes is if some people, adolescents, are even questioning their gender. Like, I was born this, but I feel this. That's obviously one that's going to throw you into role confusion. What is my role? first I have to know who I am. So determining, getting that self-identity established in adolescence is critical. Then you seek to determine what is unique and distinctive about themselves. So again, what we mentioned, I may not be the fastest runner or the best on a ball field or a court, but I know that I am amazing. I have an amazing voice, whatever the case may be. And they can identify the differences and hopefully still be supportive of the friend next to them that is maybe good at this and they're not. But you realize that I'm not going to be good at everything. And I'm obviously not perfect. I don't have all the answers. And once you kind of peel that back, and it brings them through a little bit of a vulnerable stage, but then hopefully as they mature to late adolescence, they're going to be able to accept and embrace their gifts and talents and somewhat let go of the things that they were striving for or wish that they had, whether it is physically, intellectually, relationship-wise, and you accept what you are good at, you accept what you have, and then you also can dismiss those things. This is something clearly that we deal with even into adulthood. Everyone, somewhat, most people will struggle with things from time to time, accepting who you are and being the best you that you can be. So sending that message to an adolescent is going to be critical. They may try on different roles, like I'm going to transition over here to this group where it's all the athletes and all the jocks, and I'm going to try this group. And some adolescents do very well with that. They can identify with this group, and then I can be over here with the group that everyone has a book and they're all about intellect and academics, and they can do that world. And a teen can jump over there and be very comfortable in that world. You can come over here and you want to be with all the artsy students, whether it be music, whether it be drama, whatever, it's art class, painting, whatever. I can go into that group and feel comfortable. Sometimes you want to be in the group that's fighting to be at the top and the popular crowd, while others want to sit back and they're comfortable just kind of observing and being an outlier, just watching. They're still contributing, but they don't have to be front and center stage all the time. So you'll see different groups. And for the adolescent, you may see, even if it's your child or your sibling or you yourself, remember you kind of went through a group where you want to try on different roles and see kind of where you fit in. And then hopefully, if it's a real strain for you to be with a group, you realize that's not me. I don't need to try to be that. That's not who I am. And then you work till you kind of find that group that supports and where you can be comfortable in your own skin and you know that you can relax and just be genuinely part of that group. And so trying on those different roles during this stage is important. So diffuse or the confusion state is failing to organize around a central unified core identity. So that's where the confusion comes, is I don't really know who I am and I'm trying to be whatever I think people want me to be. And especially if you're bouncing around in different groups trying to find your identity through someone else, that's going to lead to a lot of confusion and frustration for the adolescent. So, Carol Gilligan is a woman that developed identity through the establishment of relationships. So, finding your identity as you kind of sift through that through relationships with other people and other adolescents. This could be coaches, whatever the case may be. Different relationships will either strengthen you or they'll tear you down. And then knowing the difference and knowing what a healthy relationship, supportive relationship looks like that helps build you up. And you can be very transparent and it's still accepting of you, or relationships that always tend to tear you down. So make sure you look up Carol Gilligan and see a little bit more about her. Then Marcia's identity theory is identity is seen between two concepts of crisis and commitment. Identity achievement, identity foreclosure. There's some different definitions on here that you'll want to look at as well. Crisis and commitment is critical, as I was mentioning before. As you go, you can either view it for a teenager or an adolescent, if you're viewing through the eyes of everyone else and you want to please everyone you're around and you care more about what they think than your true identity, you're going to feel like that you're in a state of crisis. Whereas the commitment lies in, I know I was created for a purpose, and I know that the best role for me to be is me. Everyone else is taken. All the other identities are taken. So I need to be me, and only I know what me looks like. And I know the things that when I feel empowered and I feel that I'm contributing and I feel at peace and harmony and that I can really tap in and make a difference, I need to know that I'm comfortable in my own skin doing that. So that commitment to a self-reflection and forming a solid identity of myself and not changing depending on who I'm around, trying to please everyone else, but I can just get that inner peace and just a commitment to my own self identity and who I was created to be. That helps. So when the waves of all the things that adolescents are hit with, they can stand solid knowing who they are as a person, and they have a solid self identity. So you can see that there's a table in the textbook that you can look at to find out more about that. Identity generally gels in the late teens, early 20s. That is typically when now I've kind of filtered through all the possibilities. I'm starting to figure out who I am and what energizes me and maybe what I am on this earth to do. So this is when I think we're coming to late adolescence. We're, junior, senior in high school. We're starting to get to the point where, okay, I'm going to go to college to do this. I'm going to follow in my grandfather's footsteps and my dad's footsteps. And now I'm going to also go and I'm going to work in the family business, or I'm going to work on the farm. I'm not going to go to college, or I am going to go to college because I have found out through this process of filtering through who I am, I have found out that I love numbers and I love math and I tend to be very organized. And now I know that I am going to pursue a degree in accounting or numbers of some sort. Or what drives me is when I'm pouring into others. And now I know that I want to be in healthcare or I want to be a teacher. Whatever the case may be, I've always wanted to be a fireman or a policeman, and I have sorted through everything, and now I know that yes, that is what I'm going to do as I complete the chapter of high school and then catapult off into early adulthood. That's when generally the identity is formed, and it's usually late teens to early 20s. Depression and suicide issues in adolescence. This is critical. I want you to know that suicidal attempts are more common among girls, but successful attempts where they actually commit suicide is more common to males. So, in other words, when a male attempts, they actually commit. For females, more are going to threaten or they're going to attempt, but fewer are actually going to commit. So in class, we usually have some discussions of why or why not that might be, but know that statistic. So adolescent suicide has tripled in the last 30 years. That's a staggering and very concerning statistic just in general. 200 suicidal attempts for every one that's committed. So catching when there is disturbing behavior, catching that early and trying to address that is going to be critical. You can also look in the textbook about this, as well as just even for on our campus and with all of the effects of the pandemic, suicide just blues, leading into depression, leading into thoughts, suicidal ideation. If that is ever even a concern of yours or of mine, knowing where resources are. And we have where you can call campus security. Do you know who to call on campus? We have that posted around, but you can let anyone know and know that that's a safe place. Hurricane Clinic, you can identify where you can get resources to help you with that as well. Aggression and bullying. This used to be more common. You would think of your backyard playground brawl that people would have. Boys generally are going to be physical and get it out, and then they're totally fine. Girls, however, will oftentimes pretend everything's fine, let it harbor, and then they get home, they tell 20 people, kind of work behind the scenes a little bit more. In general, not always the case, but that tends to be the issue. So where physical bullying and brawls would come out, and it typically was the aggression and the testosterone raging in males and adolescent boys, now we're seeing bullying is shifting more towards the adolescent girl, because they can take Kate, they're a little more sneaky. They like to be behind the scenes, behind a screen, sadly, where they are now rising almost double to that of what the bullying with young adolescent boys, because they have the ability to hide behind a screen. More so, it's when it's physical, typically with a boy, that's not the same for a girl, but they tend to go after, whereas it wants to be physical, done, taken care of, put it behind us, and now we can move on. For boy, girls, adolescent girls tend to want it to drag on, have a little more lasting impact, get a few more people involved, and try to more a character assassination, slander against another female generally. So that's where we have seen a shift from, not only is aggression and bullying on the rise, but we're having a shift because of the virtual nature of it becoming more, almost double, girls as opposed to males. Relationships with family and friends, the quest for autonomy, having independence and a sense of control over one's life. This is a difficult challenge, and it's more so, it's just as much for the parents or the caregivers as it is for the adolescent. So not only does the adolescent want more freedom, more independence, and they want those choices, but they are still in the confines of a family unit. So how does that look? You have to have someone releasing a little bit of that independence in order for the child to take that. So you have to have that in unison. And sometimes the timetables don't necessarily line up. So you have a child that's all of a sudden they're sitting in maybe their mom feels they're sitting there coddling their son, and next thing, boom, he's out and wants to be with friends constantly, doesn't want to be seen in public, doesn't want to be dropped off at the curb, wants to be dropped off or picked up by friends. And there's a jump in that independence that they want to see, and maybe the caregiver is not quite ready at that time to give it. So there has to be some negotiation in that stage of gaining that independence and earning that independence. And then if there's ever a breach or an abuse in that, it's just constantly a negotiation between caregivers and adolescents as they seek that independence and sense of self-control over their lives. Whereas caregivers have determined schedules, bedtimes, what we're going to eat, when we're going to eat, all these different things, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. Now all of a sudden, when you get an adolescent, you'll have different activities, maybe it's a sporting event or piano lessons or singing lessons or whatever the case may be. They have cheer, they have their own activities, and now they start going with friends or different things, and friends are having more of an impact in their life, and their schedules tends to take a different shift, and it's harder and harder to get those meal times together, and now they eat on the go and they're not with the caregivers, and it's just a constant give and take, which is that transformation, which is healthy, of them gaining their independence and prepping them for when they go to college, or they start their job, or they're out on their own, that they're starting to gain that. So it's not healthy for caregivers to dictate that all the way through adolescence into young adulthood. Obviously, that's not going to be healthy if they're trying to gain that sense of identity of who they are in their independence. Is there a generation gap? Maybe more narrow than you might imagine. Parents as people and not how complementary are they? So you can have a child. This can be where there can be some rebellion if the child has always felt like they are cramming me down my throat to think this way, do this, whatever. Then they get in adolescence and they get a little taste of that independence, and they want to go and express themselves in their own way. They're hungry for that, their own identity. So just seeing where that's at, and that generation gap of, it's easy for an adolescent to think my caregivers, my parents have no clue what I'm going through. And then in reality, you realize, okay, they were this age before. And although there may be some differences, and obviously there are some differences, they too have went through this. And especially if you have older siblings, caregivers have been through this process. But it's easy for an adolescent in an attempt to get their own identity and their independence to think that they have all the answers, and the caregivers do not. So an adolescent's argument may be more reasonable, and the teen may be trusted with more freedom when they earn that. So obviously one that doesn't pounce out in a state of rebellion, but slowly eases out of the nest, is going to be a much smoother transition for both caregivers and the adolescent. Relationships with peers, a compulsive need to communicate with friends. So this is why, and this is adults too, so I'm not going to just throw this on adolescents, that this is specific to them. It's, you enter that stage where you're in almost a state of constant communication with friends. All the social media that we have access to now, you don't have to call on the phone or run down the street and knock on the door. You just send a simple text or a snap or a post, whatever the case may be. And it's bringing positive reinforcement in many cases, but as we just mentioned in bullying and aggression, it can also bring a negative aspect to you instantly, just constantly. So caregivers helping to set some healthy parameters for an impulsive adolescent is going to be very critical. If it's positive, great. And if it's not, what can we do about that? Because we don't want that. Same way as if it's an adult and you bring work home or school, whatever the case may be, at some point you need to be able to close that door and have your safe place where you can refuel and build yourself up. But if you have an adolescent has the phone in the hand all the time, boop, 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 just hitting you, whatever they're reading can affect their self-perception. So that's critical, that what we put in, we know it's what's going to come out. So knowing that the adolescent doesn't have as strong of a filter established yet, and they're not still in those early stages of adolescence or until that maturity is in place, that's going to impact as they self-reflect and try to form their self-identity. All of that they're putting in is helping mold that. So that's critical. Education, caregivers, everyone kind of in place, teachers, coaches, everything to help, because we know social media is either really, really good or it can be have very negative implications. So clicks, all types of things that can come across that used to be in person now has its own little special world in the social media world. You can still feel like an outsider even though you're connected, or you're constantly feeling like you're trying to keep up, and it can be absolutely exhausting. Or even the FOMO, fear of missing out, just constantly feeling almost a sense like I've ran a marathon. I'm trying to keep up, and this is so exhausting. So being able to put up some healthy boundaries there is critical. Females, connecting through talking activities and activates pleasure centers in a girl's brain, so they tend to like to talk it out. You can look through estrogen at puberty increases dopamine. You don't need to know all of that and how that is triggered. Just a sense that we mentioned with aggression and bullying. This is the fact that they like to talk and network is a good thing when it's supportive. If it's an attack on someone or has a negative connotation, it can be very bad and have deep-rooted concerns. So just making girls aware of that. You're held accountable for everything you say and everything you type, regardless if you're behind a screen. And just because it's on Snapchat and you think it goes away, the implications that has on someone when they read that is long lasting after that has already disappeared. Males, the testosterone tends to bring, they do like to talk and connect, but generally they're going to connect on more of a not, hey, how are you feeling? What'd you think about what she was wearing? Did you see that look she gave me when I came in? Not like that, like that the girls will do, but males will tend to gravitate towards, we're on the same team, we're in the same activity, and their conversations tend to gravitate more towards safer things that are less personal, but your favorite team, your favorite activity type things. So, juvenile delinquency, 16% are serious violent crimes committed by adolescents. When we spoke in the first clip on chapter 11 about the impulse, we don't have all the rationing and thinking and able to connect of cause and effect. We know it, but we're not, as an adolescent, actually panning this out of what this could look like. Again, I think I gave the example. I'm in the moment, being impulsive, trying to have them think I'm cool. So I'm going to drink. It could even be, I don't even want this drink, but I'm going to drink because I want them to think that I'm cool, which I know that if I drink and drive, the potentials that I could harm myself or someone else are there. But at the same time, impulsively, I'm going to drink, then drink again because, wow, all eyes are on me. This is fun. This is exciting. I feel the energy in the room. And then you go and look at all these people who seem to think that I'm cool. Then you go, all the people have left. You hop in a car, you drive, you nearly kill yourself, but find out you killed a minivan full of 3 kids and their parents. And now all of a sudden the course of what your life could have been takes a drastic change simply off of you in the moment in your impulse. Or I was with a group, I just wanted to be cool, and they told me to run in and steal something, and I didn't know how to tell them no or what I should do, because then who would I hang out with? So I took it, and next thing you know, you've committed a crime that most likely for adolescents, that was not the goal for their life. So this is where those that you surround yourself in kind of help you form your identity. So it's critical for an adolescent that they are around people that, yes, this is me. This feels good. This is, I feel very at peace with myself when I'm in this group, and I'm not trying to be something I'm not, or trying to be something they want me to be. Another case of that. So let's see, functions of dating, sexual behavior in teenage pregnancy. This is a big one. As we're all adolescents, we're seeing puberty again can start even down to, we said 12 to 14 kind of tends to be the range, but we're seeing 10 years old even now. So 10, 11, 12, all the way up to it can be late teens that puberty hits. So everyone hitting at different points along adolescence. And then how does everyone feel about, and have we given the proper education to know what you would do if you were in a certain situation? We try to give education through the schools. I don't know how effective a lot of this is. There can be pamphlets, ads, but it's somewhat of an awkward, uncomfortable situation for adolescents. So a lot of times they don't think through what they would do in a given situation until they're actually in it. Then you add in hormones, emotions, trying to be cool, trying to be accepted. And in certain situations, I can feel accepted if somebody needs me. So you find you get into a situation, adolescents will think, again, I was not trying to get pregnant where things would be more challenging. And now as a young adult, I wanted to go to college and now I have a young child and all this. They know, generally always, they know what that would lead to, but it's that impulsivity until everything is formed as we're getting that more deep thinking and forming those connections as an adolescent. So we see all the repercussions of that. Sexual orientation, approximately 4 to 10%, both men and women are homosexual an extended period in their life. It may not be exclusive orientation, it may be bisexual. And now more than ever, it just seems that there's a lot of different perspectives that come in, and there's not as much on our traditional marriage that we once knew. And this is just saying that you kind of get into that stage again of exploring, and then it generally then, as you can see the statistics here. So during sexual orientation, again, is during that self-reflection, and hopefully it is what you feel for yourself. So teenage pregnancy, the birth rate for teenagers, this date here we have is 2016 was 20.3 births per 1,000 females. That's age 15 to 19. But the current one I have here is 2019, and that's up to 23.2 births per 1,000 females. And we are unfortunately at the top. I've had this discussion before. We are at the top, Oklahoma, for teenage pregnancies, high school dropouts, poverty rates, all of these things, because they all intertwine, and it all kind of rewinds back to adolescence, because a lot of these impulsive behaviors and then thus consequences from those will impact young adulthood and then into adulthood as they're trying to care for their children. So that's why adolescence is such a critical stage. I have a figure on here that you can see where Oklahoma lies, and it's good to be on top, but not in these cases. Unfortunately, we got a lot of work to do here in Oklahoma. Okay, you can see some research I have on there with Brown and Gilligan. You can see a Meeting at the Crossroads research. You can look at that. There won't be any exam questions on that, but it is of interest if you would like to read that. Okay, so that is all for chapters 12. 11 will be posted. It's broken up into a couple parts. I'm going to try to piece that together. Otherwise, you'll see that on there, and you can click on for chapters 11. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. And Erickson's stage for adolescence is going to be what your reflective paper will be on. So I look forward to reading those. But any questions with writing the paper or this content, please reach out to me. Have a super day.